I used to teach an AI course, actually for BEd University. They used to do natural and machine intelligence. And AI is a great term for anything you've only just taught computers how to do. It's nothing to do with real human intelligence, which is kind of why I've been switched to neuroscience. Human brains are developed through years of evolution and experience. We respond to things emotionally, instinctively, using these heuristics, these rules of thumb that we've built throughout many millennia of evolution. Computers, on the other hand, particularly things like ChatGPT, are looking at one part of that. They're looking at the kind of things that we say to each other on the internet, and are learning to produce strings of words or images that look like other things that we put on the internet. Then you have a narrow view of human intelligence. So the idea that machines that are trained on this very narrow section of human output can in any way replicate or understand human experience is way.
I think one of the things I find the most interesting about the AI conversation is we're talking about it's just something that's coming or something that is here now. But actually AI has been quite baked into things that we're doing for quite some time. And you talk about some of the ways that we might not even think on this AI, but is actually cast as that.
Yeah, I mean, back in the 1950s was right when this term was starting to be contested. There were lots of things like machine learning, fuzzy logic, natural language understanding, and various topics came together under both Marvin Minsky at MIT, founded this artificial intelligence, essentially department in the university, which really annoyed the psychologists and the neuroscientists because there wasn't a definition, and there still isn't a real working definition of what intelligence is. But it came out of something called cybernetics, this idea of trying to use computers to better control things. So things like the way the washing machine might be able to adjust how many brothers more and how much water it fills with, so that it can be more energy efficient. That's something that 4 years ago we were calling AI. Now it's just teaching happening machine. Things like when Amazon tells you people who read books like this also tend to like books like that, something that we call, I used to study this, it's very annoying with terms gone, but back in Amazon, when I first started my research, this was cutting edge stuff. Now we pay it absolutely no mind whatsoever. So when I said, AIs, and you've only just taught computers how to do, I wasn't really kidding. And we've been through a cycle very much like the one that we're experiencing now, where it looked like because you could have a conversation with a computer in a way that you haven't had before, that we were on the verge of having conversations with another intelligence. And this first happened in the 1960s. There's a guy called Joseph Weizenbaum who created a program called ELIZA, named for Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady. And it was very good at answering questions to this question. So if you've ever been to something called a Rogerian therapist or a Rogerian counsellor, they do a very similar thing. Like, oh, God, I'm really fed up today. Because why are you really fed up today? What's my husband? What is it about your husband? And to Weizenbaum, who built this, the really exciting thing for him in terms of technology was being able to take in these natural language streams and produce natural language streams to a screen that people could interact with in real time instead of punching cards. But his colleagues started to get really intensely attached to ELIZA. But when the program was coming to an end, there were several people who were saying, you can't take ELIZA away from us. And he wrote this amazing book that is still relevant today on essentially our relationships with what appears to be sentient or appears to be human-like, and how we do so much of the heavy lifting. I mean, most of you will have probably, cursed a printer at some point for being a recalcitrant so-and-so. This is a talk on swearing, so I'll leave it clean. And we know that we can make things appear. We default to thinking that things have intelligence, sentience, or even, the desire to support us. Well, they don't. But Weizenbaum was essentially pushed out of MIT in favor of these sort of techno-utopians who are like, no, we're going to create these things that can interact with us, see if they were other humans. And they've been working on this down for 60, 70 years, and we're still genuinely no closer.
And that takes me to my next question, because we've been working, like you say, for 60, 70 years. I think a big fear that a lot of people have about AI is, as you were speaking to, the input is the output. So the output is as good as the questions that we're asking it. So can you tell us some examples where AI has been used to address gender disparities and promote women's rights and opportunities? Because bias, I think, is a big thing that everyone's wondering about. Is it going to make it better or worse?
So,
sorry, big question.
Yeah.
Do keep me an eye all the time. It's
absolutely well skilled here. So it's not going to make your jobs. It's not going to take over the world. It's not like somebody wants to do anything. It has no desires, no emotions. But as you say, it's as good as what we put in. Garbage in, garbage out. When I said that it's like OpenAI are training Reddit, it has to be no already tips. Yeah. So for the rest of you, it is basically anyone, anywhere can just say anything in a conversation. And some of those subreddits are utter cesspits of bias, misogyny, racism, and so on. So it is no wonder that one things like OpenAI have learned is that women can't be doctors, women can't be lawyers. I trained this on OpenAI the other day. I asked it, there's a doctor and a nurse. The doctor was late, so she apologised. Who apologised? The nurse. Why did the nurse apologise? I'm not sure, but you said she apologised. Could it be the doctor that apologised? No. Okay, so here's another one. There's a doctor and a nurse. She's pregnant. He's pregnant. The nurse is pregnant. Could the doctor be pregnant? No, normally only women can be pregnant. If you ask him directly, can women be doctors? It's been told to stop giving it that answer. Second you probe underneath the surface, it is convinced that men are doctors and women are nurses. What we've got here is the fossilization of the absolute worst biases of humanity being baked into this language model that statistically these relationships say an awful lot about and sort of a lot of pride of things of certain kinds of view. So how do we begin to reverse that? Is it too late or are we just in time? I think we are just in time. There are amazing people. There's a group called DARE that's run by DAIR, that is run by a Nick Cabreau, who was booted out of Google for daring to bring these things up. She is fabulous, and if you will not follow her and Emily and Vendor, they are the ones who have been signaling for a long time that this existential threat from AI is a wildly overblown, possibly intentional misdirection by people like Tony Stark, Elon Musk, to try to make us not worry about the harms that are happening now. People whose, in the States, medical insurance claims are being delayed. Here in the UK, people whose parole hearings are being delayed, people who are being over-policed because of the biases that are baked into these systems. The problems with AI exist now, and they're not about them taking over the world. They're about them limiting the opportunities to people who already face those limitations.
And so with that in mind, it's not an uphill battle, but there's work to do. What advice could we give to policymakers, businesses, individuals about how we actually harness the positive potential whilst mitigating the negative impacts?
Absolutely. Ask better questions about training sets. What was your model trained on? Anyone who's telling you that's classified, I can't tell you it's proprietary. Ask yourself what you'd be willing to let it be trained for. If you're willing for it to be as low quality as essentially in the Reddit threads, then by all means buy it. If you want something better, demand something better. Second of all, ask how they validate whether or not their models affect certain demographics more than others. This is an area of research I was involved in. It's very hard to fund. I know there are people from EPSRC here today. About how you essentially can probe models for demographic bias. There are some amazing projects that are looking at that. There's also explainability in AI is an amazing research topic. Getting models to be able to do that kind of meta language to say, I've given you this answer because, and that will allow us to make up some of those biases. And also to ask how environmentally sustainable these models are. We are literally boiling the ocean for some of these in terms of the amount of compute that's required. So some of this investment needs to be not just in models that are open and as unbiased as is possible to make it, but also how sustainable for the future. The within fast and great things ethos of Silicon Valley really needs to be held to better account, and it's people like you who are making the buying decisions, who are even the people that they want as their eventual customers can't keep living on VC funding forever to be asking those questions.
Yes, we know let's do our next question. Are there any implications in this for funding and the VC work, especially as it relates to women founders, women business owners?
I mean, VC funding for women founders and for women business owners, as you know, is already absolutely parlous. I can't remember the exact stats. I know I looked it up on the briefing call with Anne-Marie and Griselda, but something like only 6% of VC, not even the amount of money actual VC funding puts were to companies that had women on their boards, at least fewer than 1%. So women led to yet not. So women-led industries are not getting those VC opportunities that male-led industries are. And I don't know why that is. You mentioned earlier, it's not a case of fixing the women. It's a case of understanding why venture capital is so excited by move fast, break things to hell with the consequences versus we're here for a long time. We don't need a long time yet. We need to be thinking about what this company is in 30 years. When Google was founded, they weren't thinking, what will it be in 30 years? They were thinking, what is it now? And you can see the tensions between the old days and the evil and the new, and like you data, everything, thank you. So yeah, looking at founders, looking at the long-term consequences, and I know that's something VC tends to have appetite for, really needs to move that way.
I'm going to do a bit of a name drop here. So I was actually at a talk by Anne Wintour, and she was talking about AI. It's not trying to sound, but it was very interesting. And she was actually speaking about how do we privilege human creativity over AI and the algorithms that we're doing in it. I was saying to you earlier, so I write an article about golf, which I'm obsessed with. And when I signed the contract to write them, in my contract was I'm not allowed to use AI to write my answers any way, shape, and has to be all me, which is fine. I talk a lot, got loads of opinions. But how do we think about this future where AI is doing a lot of PR, it's doing a lot of comms, we've got disinformation, all of those things. How do we make sure we are privileging human creativity, not leaning too much on these kind of systems?
So we'll have two answers about this. The first is the fact that I don't know many Zoomers, but I do know a few. And that right now, saying something is a bit AI is a bit an insult because there is a cliche with a satisfying copy. So this is good enough to describe something in its catalogue, but it doesn't have that moment of connection. So when you're writing your articles, there is something that you are writing from your experience and your ability to use your humanity, to touch the humanity of your reader. This is something that this type of generative system can't do. It can generate outputs. It has no way of faking that connection. The other is the fact that it will keep filling the internet with this AI-generated nonsense. There's a brilliant paper that came out recently. I think it's called Poisoning the Well. It's basically the fact that if you keep training statistical language models on the output of statistical language models, over time, the output becomes absolute garbage. So at the moment, these companies are relying on all of that human creativity to go, I'm going to learn from all of these images, I'm going to learn from these articles that are written by these finest minds that are, in creativity, fan fiction, and whatever. Over time, as those human creators are crowded out on the internet, will be full of stuff that AI can then learn from. And at that point, organizations like OpenAI are really going to care about human creators.
And that will come total full circle. Thank you so much, Emma.